And I heard something rustling down in the woods. And this was all these missile sites was in wooded area. So they were all surrounded by woods. And me and my buddy was on each side. One was on the north side and the other guy was on the south side. And we had walked a complete perimeter of the fence. That's what we did every night. And we made sure that there was no enemy threat coming through there. And we knew that if anybody come up there, that dog would alert on them. So I heard this noise down there, and boy, my dog started alerting. He started chomping at the bit. Boy, he was bucking, and I was saying, come on, let's go see what it is. So, and I had him on a short leash, and I had the other leash in this hand. The bad thing about it was I had him on a 12-foot leash. If I had him on a 6-foot leash, I could have handled him one-handed. But we'd get out there and we'd let them walk off anywhere they wanted to walk, when we was on post. And we usually used a 12-foot leash. And I had him on that 12-foot leash, and I had him caught up in my my left hand, and I had my leash. Always walked with the leash in my right hand. Had it down over my hand, so if he ever tried to get away from me, he'd have to pull my arm off to get away from me. Not that he probably couldn't have done that, but he was really going wild. There was something down there in them woods, and I thought, oh man, they got somebody out here trying to act stupid, wanting to challenge us or do something like that, because they was always doing that kind of stuff. They'd come out there and see how secure the area was, So I'm walking down through there, and the closer we get, the more we hear this voice, just like somebody in there tearing up the woods. And I thought, oh man, what is this? So we got down there, and I guess I was about as far away from here to the next room down from us. And boy, all of a sudden this thing come out of the woods, and it was a wild boar.
Oh God.
And I didn't know what it was until I actually saw him come out on the run on the path that we had there. And he come at both of us. He caught me in the leg, ripped my fatigues open, and he caught that dog underneath his ribs and ripped him open. And he actually turned that dog over in the air, and the dog landed on his back. And that dog went nuts. And all this time I was trying to reach for my gun. I couldn't get my gun because I had to keep the dog under control. Right. So there was no way I could get to a gun to shoot it.
Right.
And so I'm fighting with this dog, and he's trying to pull me in the woods because the boar run through there, and then he went right back into the woods again. So he was going in after him. He was wanting part of that pig, And I said, no, boy, we ain't going in there. And he was pulling me in the brush. And I know if he ever got me in the brush, I'd never get him out there. So I finally wrapped that chain around my arm a couple of times, and I jerked him back out of there. And I said, come on, let's go. And finally I got him calmed down. And I got my flashlight out to take a look at him, and the boar had ripped him open. So I had to call the headquarters and told them to send me a truck out there that my dog was injured. Well, I told them that we were injured, and they thought maybe I was injured too. So, boy, they came out there, and they were out there in a minute. And the flight sergeant come out there with a pickup truck, and he said, "What the hell's going on?" And I said, "Sarge," I said, there, the boar come out on us, and I said, we got to get this dog back to the kennel. because he's going to bleed to death if we don't get him back. And he says, okay. He said, why didn't you shoot her? I said, I didn't have a chance to get to my gun. And he said, well, you should have shot the dumb thing. I said, yeah, I tried, but I couldn't get to my gun. And so he was in one of these small pickup trucks. And he wanted me to let the dog ride in the back end. And I said, no. I said, I can't put that dog back there hurt. Because I had the dog picked up and I was carrying him. And he said, you ain't putting that dog in the cabin with me. He said, that dog will bite me. And I said, no, he won't. I said, you just drive this truck. I said, I'll take care of the dog. So, and I could walk him in this room. He'd come in this room, and if I told him to stay here, he'd stay here. He'd never get up. There was times that I'd go into his kennel, bring him food and lay it down, and he'd start over there and I'd say, no. He'd go back over and sit down. And until I told him he could eat that food, he wouldn't touch that food. So I had him trained well. So we took him in, and of course the veterinarian was there, and he stitched him up, and he says, you're going to have to use one of the kennel dogs. And them kennel dogs were useless. I mean, you could work a kennel dog. They wouldn't bite nobody.
Right.
And it was just for show. They put us out there on post with this kennel dog. I was out there for, I guess, a week while he was recuperating. But that was one of the funny stories, that I was too dumb to get to my gun, and the dog and I both got. Major, that was over our squadron, came out and he says, Stoffel, you and Garcia is going to have to go TDY. And I said, where are we going TDY to? He says, to Vietnam. I said, oh no. I said, I'm in Germany. I ain't going to Vietnam. He says, well, we got orders for you to go, and you're going. So they sent us over with our dogs over there, because we were going to go over there and set up canine training for the big base that was there, where all the military flew in and out of, because they didn't have anybody on the gate, on the outside perimeter of the fence. And they were always having guys coming up to the fence, and they'd fire through the fence, and then by the time you got down there, they were gone. And a couple of guys had got shot down there, so they wanted to get canine out there. So Garcia and I was going there to set up the canine. And at that time, I was a senior master, or a senior airman, and Garcia was too. So we were the top-ranking guys that was in dog school. And they sent us over there, and crazy place, man. I never seen a place like that in my life. I've been in jungles and that there, but Vietnam was a total different place. Was nothing like you've ever seen in your life. Where we was at, we were on base there, and we got it all set up and told them how they'd have to have it, where they'd have to have their kennels and everything, and how many dogs they'd have to have for each night, and how many squadrons they would have to have there to guard with the dogs. Men that they'd have to have there to work with the dogs. And they said, yeah, that's what we need. We need you guys to get that all straightened up and tell us what we need so we can go to command and get orders to get them in here. So we was over there for about 3 weeks. And we got everything straightened, got everything set up for them. And when we was over there, they were bringing in bodies that had been killed over there in Vietnam. And they had them in these rubberized, zipped up things. I guess you've seen them on TV. And they had them guys stacked up out there like they were just cordwood, just piles of them stacked up out there. And they was waiting for planes to come in. They'd put them all on these planes and fly them into Frankfurt, and then from Frankfurt they'd fly them into the States when they found out who they were and where they were supposed to be going and all that there.
Right.
And it was the most eerie place I've ever been in my life. You could feel death all around you. I mean, everything. I mean, you've been around a cemetery, feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's the way it was, because you knew that there was a guy coming in there. There was a guy coming in there in a body bag every day, and they was stacking them up, waiting to transport them out there with them planes. And I thank God I never did have to go out on patrol with them, because I'd talked to some of the guys that was over there, some of the Marines and some of the Army guys that was over there, and asked them how things were going, because they were coming back there for getting, what was it? They was getting relief from being right there in the hot action of Vietnam, and they'd send them over there for rest, R&R.
Okay.
Rest and relaxation. And they'd bring them in there, and I talked to a couple of them, and they said, boy, said every time we go out there, we think we're going to get killed. Every time we go out there. And they was talking about how that sometimes they'd be out there, and they'd be in the daytime, and they'd be walking through there, and you could tell the Viet Cong from the Vietnam. They looked alike, wore the same clothes even. The Viet Cong usually dressed in a black uniform, but sometimes they'd come in with regular clothes on to fool you. And they'd have, there was one of the guys, one of the Marines told me, he said we was out there we was going to a hooch, that's a hut out there in the jungle. And they were checking it out to see if there was any Viet Cong in there. And of course there's a lot of Vietnam people in there, Vietnamese people in there. And he said they were standing there was about 6 of them standing there smoking a cigarette, just shooting a breeze, you know. And he said some kid walked up on him, and he got right in the middle of them. And he said we were always giving them candy, giving them a candy bar or something like that. They're the kids, to try and get them to be friendly with the GIs. He said this kid walked up and he just opened his shirt, opened his jacket that he had on, opened up a bomb, killed all 6 of them.
Oh my God.
Killed a kid and the 6 of them. He said they'd even have women come up there and do the same thing. They'd look like they were pregnant, and they had a bomb there, and they'd walk up there, because you wouldn't hurt a pregnant woman, you know, and they knew that. And they'd walk up there in the middle of a bunch of guys, set off a bomb to kill them all. And they said they lost more men that way than they did fight.
Wow.
And they talked about sometimes how that they'd be out there for days in a jungle. And of course I'd ate C rations and K rations too, so I knew what they were going through. They made very good eating. You know? It's not like eating Air Force chow anyway. But they flew us back after we were done there. They flew us back to Sinbach, and everything was like it was. So I didn't think no more about it. And finally, this master sergeant that we had, he come up to me one night and he said, I heard you went to Vietnam. And I said, yeah, it was kind of a awakening experience. I said, I've never been in anything like that. I said, I never seen death like that before in my life.